when I went back to my hometown, I was the assistant football coach. I was a head line coach. And the next year I was the head coach. It was interesting because probably 2/3 of the teachers that I had in high school were still teachers there. So I was teaching with teachers that I had taught. And most of the students were younger brothers and sisters of families that I knew when I went to school there. And I taught government and economics. I had every senior, I think I had 5 sections of government classes, so and I had 1 conference period. And then the next year, the head coach left and went, I don't know, to some other school, and so I was hired as the head football coach. And we had very good football teams. I was probably, the students would have considered me someone who would have made some decision about what kind of academic potential capacity you had, and would have tried to get you to use your capacity. And this was a school district where there were probably 30% of the kids would have been big farm kids in a big geographical farm, surrounding area farm. Some of them were pretty poor. Like out west of Big Rapids, there was a huge national forest in that area. One of the football players I had came from a family where they had 8 or 10 children, and they had sand floors in the house. So there was a lot of diversity. There was a college in town that where you had probably 400 or 500 professors at the college, and the town was big enough that it had some doctors and other professionals. So it was diverse. I always believed that it was my job to get the most out of students, and that I should have expectations of them. And I was considered to be a good teacher, Michigan government was required, so you had to pass the class to graduate. And they'd had a teacher before me who really didn't expect all that much out of students. So I was a kind of a change. And when I had projects they had to do, and so they could bring the paper to my house and put it on the porch up to midnight of the night it was due. So the kids kind of enjoyed that, and I was young. Probably the seniors weren't more than 5 or 6 years younger than I was at the time. And because I taught football and was the football coach, they knew who I was, and I wasn't just another teacher in the school district. And I had taught many of their brothers and sisters I had known, and I always enjoyed teaching, and I loved teaching government and economics. I always enjoyed school, but I also when I worked a year and taught a year when I was at Central, this small school district, Crystal Lake, I knew that I was going to like very much teaching. If you're fair with kids, if they understand how they're getting their grade, what's expected of them, most of them will figure out and think that's a pretty good deal. And they could always look at my grade book and see what they were getting or what they had gotten on a project or a quiz or a test. And they could figure all of that out. And the kids that came from the rural parts of town, I think didn't figure that I favored the local doctor's kids or the college professor's kids more than them. So and that was, I mean, a lot of teachers have favorites, and that doesn't work. I mean, it just doesn't work to your advantage if you treat different people differently in the same circumstance. But I had high expectations, but I wouldn't. If you did your work, if you handed in your work, you could get maybe a D, but you could pass, because the class you had to pass it to graduate. But the first semester I taught there were probably 5 or 6 students who got E's because they didn't hand in their work, and they either had to retake that semester or go to summer school, or they weren't going to get a high school diploma. And the high school principal wanted me to change a bunch of grades from E's to D minuses, and I said, well, if you wanna give them a grade of D minus and put your name on it, go ahead, but I'm not gonna. He and the principal wasn't willing to take the gaff for doing it, because he knew that he'd gotten some gaff for doing it. But he was more than willing to have me do it. So I probably had I did have all the seniors, and that would have been, you going?
Yeah. Goodbye.
I always enjoyed teaching in my hometown, because I figured I had a real knowledge that made teaching easier for me than it would for a person with no more experience than I had at the community, because I knew all their brothers and sisters. And I also had taught before that for 5 years, so I wasn't a rookie. I didn't have discipline problems with the students in my classroom. They knew that I was consistent in who I was and what I expected out of them. And I was a good enough student I was a good student when I was there, so I got along with the teachers.